following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers. This is the TFangy coming to you with what will hopefully be a quick and successful review. And today we're going to be taking a look at a Transformers action figure that is somewhat of an oddity because, well, I've been saying to all my subscribers and everyone else that I don't buy and collect Transformers action figures in the Studio Series line apart from the Studio Series 86 figures, but at the start of this year, this one figure I found on sale at my local Target store, so I figured, why not get it? Now, the reason I got this figure was to repurpose it into a Transformers Generation 1 character, and I'll explain about that a little later in the video. But tonight we're going to be taking a look at an action figure, which for a lot of my subscribers who've been watching my videos recently, and how I concentrate on Transformers Legacy action figures, this one will come out of left field, but the title of the video is no joke. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Revenge of the Fallen, So yes, the Fallen is, I believe, the 91st action figure to be released in the Studio Series line, which encompasses all of the live action movies. So that's really amazing how long the Studio Series line has lasted. I think Studio Series is now the longest lasting line of Transformers action figures. But here you got some artwork of the Fallen on the front of the box. So you got the logo from the second live action movie on there. Got some artwork of him on that side of the box. Got a close up of his face, and he is very monstrous looking. Coming in here, the back of the box, you got your product photos. You got the robot mode, vehicle mode, and you got the accessory pieces of the staff, the removable mask revealing the inner head on the inside, and it's based on the final scene in the final battle of the second movie where Optimus Prime is fighting the Fallen and eventually defeats him, hence why you've got the removable face gimmick. And his one-sentence biography, the Fallen engages Optimus Prime in a fierce battle, Prime against Prime. So, some brief history on the Fallen. He was a character created by Dreamwave Comics back in the year, I think it was either 2000 or 2001, when Dreamwave was the comic book company. Hasbro switched to from Marvel to produce the official Transformers comic books. And the Fallen, basically, his actual name wasn't revealed until IDW printed it out. I think it was either in 2010 or 2011 after the second live action movie had been released, which is why here on the box he's known by his original name of the Fallen. And it wasn't until after the live action movie had been released that IDW finally revealed his official name as Megatronus Prime. And he was one of the 13 original Primes. He was the first Decepticon who betrayed the Primus and the Autobots and joined Unicron. So so it's kind of interesting that Hasbro and Tomy gave him his original name of the Fallen that he had in Transformers fiction before his actual name of Megatronus Prime was revealed. But yeah, that's basically by all accounts who he is. And within Transformers fiction, Megatron named himself after Megatronus Prime. The main reason I decided to get this action figure was not only because it was on sale at my local Target store, but also the main reason I got this figure was to see if I could maybe try and repurpose it as the Transformers Generation 1 character of Violent Jiger. Just go ahead and search on your internet search engine Violent Jiger, and you'll find out that he was the Decepticon tyrant who was the main threat in the final episode of Transformers Generation 1 titled Transformers Zone. And in that so-called what ended up being the series finale of Transformers Generation 1 in Japan, Violent Jiger was the last of the Decepticon warlords who had been hiding in the shadows, and when he came out, he thought that the Autobots would be vulnerable since most of the Autobots were now Micromasters, and he decided to unleash the 9 Decepticon generals, which were the 9 physically largest Decepticons from throughout Transformers history. 6 of them were the 6 most powerful of the Decepticon combiners. You had Devastator, Predaking, Menasor, or Bruticus, Piranacon, on Piranacon. I can't remember who the 6th combiner was, if it was Abominus or Lio Kaiser. But then you also had the 2 Decepticon Titans of Tripticon and also Scorponok, who was resurrected as Black Zarak. And then you had the leader of the Decepticon Power Masters, Overlord, And Violent Jiger believed that with the 9 Decepticon generals under his command, that they would be the greatest threat to the Autobots. Well, they would not only be the greatest threat to the Autobots, they'd be a threat so powerful the Autobots wouldn't have a chance of stopping them whatsoever. But little to Violent Jiger's dismay, he wasn't aware that a new team of Autobots called the Powered Masters, led by Diatlas, had arrived, and Diatlas, along with his teammates Sonic Bomber and also the Autobot Micromasters working together, they not only managed to defeat the 9 Decepticon generals, but then they revived Star Saber and God Jinrai, who was rebuilt into Victory Leo, and Star Saber and Victory Leo, it'll reveal that they could combine into Victory Saber, and with Diatlas and Victory Saber working together, Violent Jiger was defeated. And as far as his appearance goes, technically the Fallen doesn't look a thing like Violent Jiger did, but it's pretty close compared to most other Transformers action figures that have been released. I've seen a couple of people customizing various Transformers action figures to try and make a Violent Jiger action figure. But considering the fact that Violent Jiger was a fairly large Decepticon on Warlord, and his appearance, basically he was somewhat skeletal looking, and he had mostly purple as his primary paint job. And so one could argue that Violent Jiger looked almost like a Transformers version of Skeletor from the He-Man franchise. But all things considered, I think that this figure can double as that action figure in addition to the figure that it's officially supposed to be. One thing I do want to note, and other collectors have pointed this out too, in the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen movie, the Fallen himself, he didn't actually transform into a vehicle mode because he had the ability of teleportation, Asian and supersonic speed, so he didn't really have the need to transform into a vehicle mode. And so um, when it came time to design his original action figure for the Revenge of the Fallen line back in 2009, Hasbro and Takara Tomy just made up a vehicle mode for him, but he didn't actually have one in the Transformers live action movie. But considering the fact that Hasbro and Takara Tomy worked virtually from nothing, I think they gave the Fallen slash Megatronus Prime a decent enough vehicle mode, and it's basically a Cybertronian jet that looks like it's made out of a bunch of mechanical tentacles. And that's the thing with the Fallen, is that he was a and that's the thing, not just with the Fallen, but with all the Decepticons from the second live action movie. They wanted to give the Decepticons monstrous forms and appearances, and so the Fallen, as far as his appearance goes, he's almost like a skeletal stick man. And I don't know whether that sounds scary, creepy, or just irritating, but yeah, that's the idea. He is a scary guy, and I think the designers for the movie did manage to reflect that with him. But considering the lore that's happened over the years and how the Fallen's official name of Megatronus Prime has been revealed, and how his threat of being the first ever original Decepticon, the first follower of Unicron on the Chaos Bringer, I think that he's still a pretty threatening menace to the Transformers. And even though the Studio Series Leader Class action figure of him has shelf warmed and has been on the shelves for such a long time, he's actually started to appear at Ross Dress for Less stores at a discount price. I think he's going for under $20 now. I could be wrong. But yeah, he has started to appear at Ross stores. So if you find this guy at Walmart or Target, don't bother. Try and go to a Ross Dress for Less store or see if you can find him there. But basically, just like so many of the Studio Series Transformers action figures, you either completely love this figure or you completely hate it. And judging by the number of copies I've seen in the months since I got my own copy, I think most collectors don't really have a thing for this action figure. But all things considered, since I got this guy to repurpose him as a Generation 1 character, I decided I had to give it a chance. Since the word from Hasbro and Takara Tomy basically is that as far as Japanese Generation 1 Transformers characters go, Hasbro and Takara Tomy still think there's no market for Japanese exclusive Generation 1 Transformers characters, and that can be seen by the fact that most Japanese Generation 1 Transformers characters have in recent years been released as exclusives, and for the ones that were I just lost the word, shown to be physically large characters such as Star Saber or Death Stars, they've been released as HasLab exclusives here in the United States by Hasbro. So the odds of an official Violent Jiger action figure actually being created and released in the United States by Hasbro, I have a feeling it's not going to happen. happen anytime soon. So without further delay, hey, let's get this guy out of his box and take a close look at him in his robot mode. And right before we get him out of his packaging, one of the reasons why a lot of Transformers fans and collectors haven't really enjoyed this figure too much and why he's shelf warm for such a long time after his initial release is because apparently early releases of the Fallen action figure, his staff and also his face mask, there have been multiple copies of this figure where those accessory pieces were missing and weren't even packaged inside the box, and so a lot of fans and collectors, out of annoyance at seeing that quality control, all of the accessory pieces missing, they just returned the figure back and didn't even bother to get a second copy just in case the accessory pieces are missing. So even though I found this guy at Target earlier this year, I lucked out and was able to get a copy that has all of the accessory pieces inside him. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, that when you get the Fallen out of the box for the first time, if you see this baggie here on the back, which is the face mask, and you see on the side of the box here, if you don't see the two halves of his staff right here included, then you've unfortunately found a copy that has the missing accessory pieces. But thankfully, since all the pieces are here we can take a close look at him in all of his intended glory that Hasbro and Takara designed for this figure. Alright, and so here is Studio Series The Fallen, a.k.a. Megatronus Prime, out of his box and in his robot mode. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how long the staff is. It's uh, almost 2 inches taller than the Fallen is himself, so that's really impressive looking. But one thing I like about the inclusion of the staff is that on his original action figure that was released back in 2009, and the staff was omitted from it, and the Fallen, his action figure was repainted twice into a mostly orange volcanic version that was used exclusively at Target, and then there was a blue version that had a version of the staff that was released in the Transformers Hunt for the Decepticons line in 2010. So the inclusion of the staff is a nice addition here, especially since he used it throughout the live action movie. And so that was one thing that was a minor gripe I always had with the original figure, was that the staff wasn't included here, but it really is a nice staff. It does break into two halves, as you can see right there. Here, those two halves are right there behind one of his fingers. And as far as fingers go, he actually has, let's see if I'm counting them correctly, actually he has 8 fingers on him, so that's pretty monstrous looking there. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the filmmakers working on the Revenge of the Fallen movie, they wanted the Decepticons to all have monstrous appearances, and the Fallen, being the title villain of the film, is no exception to that. And one thing I do like is all the detailing used here on his face sculpt. It is, see if I can adjust my camera here without like anything. But yeah, there's a close-up of the Fallen's face, and it is a mask. It's designed to be detachable to mimic the scene at the end of the movie when Optimus Prime tears the Fallen's head off of him. So here's the close-up of the mask there. That's his actual face, and then there's his inner robot skull. That once it's exposed, he starts bleeding out and he dies. As soon as Optimus Prime decapitates him. But yeah, the Fallen, and he is pretty. And I think this new Studio Series figure is pretty accurate to his appearance in the film. His head can go up and down, so if you want to give him a more hunchback appearance, you can leave the head down this far. But if you want him to look be as tall as possible, you can put the head up that far. In terms of articulation, his arms are attached to his back via these mechanical extensions on here. You can detach these they plug into the back right there if you want to give him more fully articulation of his arm joints. But when his arms are attached to his back, as far as articulation goes, basically the shoulders can go in and out, and there's a swivel joint that allows the arms the potential to spin 360 degrees forwards and backwards. There's a bicep swivel, and there's a wrist swivel that isn't hindered, and the hands can go inward and outward. And there's a double jointed hinge joint at the elbow I forgot to mention. But when his arms are attached to his back, they limit the amount of articulation, especially in the upper arms. But then again, the Fallen in the film, he did move kind of stiff if like he didn't really want to move unless absolutely necessary. So I think that was part of the creepy factor for him. Due to how he transforms, there is no waist articulation. But then looking down here at his waistline, in the Fallen, his pelvis, you could argue, is exposed. And that's the thing that the filmmakers were going for with the Fallen's design, was making him look like almost like a skeleton covered in flesh. So almost like in between a skeleton and a zombie as far as his physical appearance goes. But the legs can have the potential to spin clockwise and counterclockwise 360 degrees. Swivel joint in the upper part of the thigh. Hinge joint in the knee. But the Fallen, these chicken legs that he has, that is screen accurate. So unfortunately, his legs not being fully straightened out that's technically is screen accurate. So if you want to have the version of the Fallen that has his legs completely straightened out, then you'd have to swap these legs out and modify your own custom ones. And then the feet are on ball joints at the ankles, so technically they can go up and down this far, and they can't rotate around as much. And then of course you can move the toes at different angles if you want. So overall, a fairly decent amount of articulation, even when he has his arms attached to his torso or so. And again, and I really do enjoy the paint, all the paint that was put onto his actual face, which is a mask here due to Optimus Prime ripping it off in the film. But I love how they made the tentacles blue. That was accurate to his appearance in the movie, and I love that his main paint job is an actual shade of black plastic. And what I mean by that is, for a size comparison, here is the Studio Series Leader Class The Fallen, and compared to his original 2009 action figure, the original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager Class The Fallen. So yes, this figure is Voyager Class as sized in 2009, and this is Leader Class size in 2023. And yeah, there is not much of a height difference. This one is only half a head taller than this guy, and in terms of sheer overall size, this one is only a slightly bulkier than the original 2009 Voyager class figures, so by all accounts, they're almost the same size, so not much of a size difference, even though this guy originally retailed for, I believe, a Voyager class Transformers back in 2009 were still going for $20. And this guy retails for $50 now. So it is a bit of a shame that even though this is Leader class and the original 2009 figure is Voyager class, they're almost the same size due to the amount of downsizing Hasbro's done over the years. One minor gripe I have with the Studio Series figure is that one thing they didn't replicate from the original 2009 Voyager class figure is the tiny little silver Decepticon logo there on his waist. Ace, the Studio Series figure doesn't have that. Decepticon logo on there. I don't know. Oh, it's been a while since I've watched any of the reviews of the Studio Series figure, but I don't think the Fallen actually has a Decepticon faction logo found on him. So it is kind of a shame that they didn't try and replicate the Decepticon logo the original figure had. But yeah, as you can see, this is how the original figure was. The reason why the feet are shaped like this is because the toes were part of the Automorph gimmick with the Revenge of the Fallen action figures, where his toes are on springs and they'd spring load out. So if you wanted to make him hop up and fly through the air, his toes will then just go automatically down. The springs are worn out on the toes on this foot, so that's why that one toe is still sticking out to the side instead of dangling downward. But yeah, overall, all the joints are the articulated joints are pretty much the same. Aim and Amen. Pretty much the only main difference is the backpacks, where he has these two triangle pieces here on the back. This one, the backpack, is the cockpit of the jet at vehicle mode. And even though the heads do each have a gimmick, they're different gimmicks. His gimmick is that his face gets torn off, and the gimmick on the original figure is that his horns, if you want to make him slightly more screen accurate, they actually are meant to store there inside at his back, and then when you pull the head forward, they automatically flip out to the sides. But the horns actually store away inside alt mode once you transform the original figure. That's why I splayed them out in robot mode. And overall, some of the more spiky parts on both these figures. This one has a lot more spiky parts than this figure does. They're all made out of rubber, but as far as which figure is the better figure, I am going to say that without a doubt, hands down, the new Studio Series figure is the superior figure compared to the original. One thing that I always would nitpick to myself about is that the original the Fallen figure from 2009, Hasbro and Tomy decided to make it charcoal gray, instead of the screen accurate black that he had in the movie. So that's one thing I do praise the designers at Hasbro and Tomy for doing, is making the Fallen Fallen actually black like he is in the film. So that's a nice that definitely puts this up over the original figure. So pretty much that's it for the Fallen in robot mode. What you see is what you get. It's screen accurate. It has the staff, and he's very menacing looking, with and without his actual face attached to him. And like I said, the main reason I got this figure was because I wanted to repurpose him as Generation 1 Violent Jiger. I think it works due to how monstrous looking Violent Jiger was. One could argue that he was one of the first monstrous looking Transformers characters. But let me know down in the comment section what you guys think, if you think this figure can be repurposed as Generation 1 Violent Jiger. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So without further delay, let's get the All-In transformed into his vehicle mode, and we'll wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is the Fallen transformed into his alt mode of a Cybertron jet. And yeah, it is quite freaky looking here. I love how the back sections transform up this. It almost looks like he has a pair of spider legs on his eggs coming out of his jet engines onto the wing tips. But yeah, this is one of the freakier designs of all the Transformers that's ever come out. There's the cockpit for his jet mode. It's done in almost like a blood red clear plastic. Aztec, and the transformation is somewhat similar compared to his original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class action figure from 2009. The jets are virtually the same size. The wingspan on the new Studio Series figure, depending on how you have the toes angled, it is just slightly wider, but not by too much. So yeah, the design. So there are just as many similarities as there are differences between both of these action figures in vehicle mode. And again, in the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen movie, the Fallen never actually transformed. He armed due to his ability to teleport and travel from one spot to another in an instant. So he didn't really have didn't necessarily need to have a vehicle mode. So the vehicle mode coming out looking like this, yes, it was just Hasbro and Tomy improving on the design from the original figure back in 2009. But in terms of which one is the better figure, I personally believe the Studio Series figure is the superior figure compared to the original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class figure. Even though with Transformers action figures being downsized, they are roughly the same size compared to each other. I do enjoy how the new Studio Series figure came out, and with the staff now included, you can attach them on the wingtips, and it looks like a pair of missiles hanging on the wings there. And the tabs, while they might be a little more finicky on the new Studio Series figure, they are much less of a hassle than the original figure. And what I mean by that is, right now, tonight, during my review of the new Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen action figure, after owning this thing for 14 years and being careful every time I transformed it, one of the pegs that keeps the rope mode arms in place finally broke off tonight when I was transforming it. The pegs are extremely tiny and very big hassle to move it, and they're extremely tiny. So if you do what I did and you're trying to wiggle the arm in so it tabs in place securely, you're going to break the peg like I did. So if you have the original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class figure of Megatronus Prime, then be careful with those pegs when you transform the original figure. But unlike this figure, which relied on tiny pegs to hold large parts together, technically the new Studio Series figure does that, but the pegs feel like they won't break as easily over time. But overall, I do enjoy this figure, and again, I think this is the superior figure figure due to the mostly black plastic used on it. It's much more screen accurate, the new figure, than the original one. And but again, the main reason I got this figure was to try and repurpose it as Transformers Generation 1 Violent Jiger. If there's any gripes I have with this figure, it's that there aren't really any connection pegs here on the back between the engine thrusters. On the original figure, that peg that I broke was what held the engine thrusters made by the robot mode arms in place. Ace, but in terms of placements of the parts on both these figures, the robot mode head being on the back center of the fuselage, the robot mode hands dangling on either side of the fuselage, the cockpit section being a pointed nose cone that sticks out at the front of the jet, and the robot mode feet forming the wingtips. Again, there's just as many similarities as there are differences between both these figures. On the original Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class action figure, there's three tiny little landing gear found out on the figure. There's one here on the nose cone, and there's two tiny little gray landing gears found here on the out here beneath the wing. So this figure can sit perfectly on a flat surface if you want it to. The original figure. On the new Studio Series figure, there's no landing gear here to be found on it. So if you do set this thing down, it is just sitting down on the lowermost parts of the jet mode. But overall, I am impressed with how this came out. And one nice thing they did is that the top of the robot mode head looks like an extra engine thruster, so he now has more firepower for when he transforms into his alt mode. So for what it is, so because this part of the Fallen, his alt mode never actually appeared on screen, and technically this figure or the original figure, either one can be screen accurate depending on your own preference. But overall, I do enjoy how these figures turned out. So for my final thoughts on the Studio Series Revenge of the Fall, all-in leader class, the Fallen / Megatronus Prime action figure, do I recommend getting this figure and adding it to your Transformers collection? Absolutely. Do I recommend getting it even if you have the original 2009 Iron Voyager class figure? Absolutely, I do. This is the more screen-accurate version of the Fallen. All-in, it has the more screen-accurate paint job. It actually comes with the staff. You even have and while the gimmick of being able to tear his face off to mimic the scene when Optimus Prime defeats him, while it might not be the best gimmick, it's still a fun gimmick to see. And in my personal opinion, this figure can be repurposed into Generation 1 Violent Jiger. That was my motivation for getting this figure, so I honestly don't understand why the figure has shelf-warmed for such a long period of time and why hardly anyone has had any interest in getting it, but then that could be just because I don't. The only Studio Series Transformers figures I buy and collect are the Generation 1 characters from the Studio Series 86 line. This is one of only two Studio Series Movieverse figures I've added to my collection. The first one I got was the Bumblebee movie Blitzwing Voyager class figure, but then I customized that into my own custom Generation 2 G-Axis figure. So it's literally once in a blue moon that I get any of the Studio Series live action movie figures. I think between Bumblebee movie Blitzwing, which I customized into Generation 2 G-Axis, and now this, I think those are the only two Studio Series Movieverse designed figures that I have in my Transformers collection. So I don't know how rare it is, how uncommon it is for a collector to say this, but I do think that the Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen Leader Class of the Fallen figure is one of the must-have Transformers figures for anyone's Transformers collection. Even if you want to do what I do and try and display him on the Generation 1 Transformers collections, I think it looks, for as freaky of a design as he is, to see him standing beside Generation 1 Megatron and the other Generation 1 Decepticons, I think for the first original Decepticon, which is what he's supposed to be, I think it works out pretty well. His name, the Fallen, is derived from, I don't know how true it is or not, but from what I've read on the internet, the Fallen, his name is taken from, Lucifer, the fallen angel, who was cast out of heaven and sent down into hell and ended up becoming Satan, and so that's what why this character was given that name, AIM. AIM. But even though within Transformers fiction, Unicron is the Transformers version of the Devil, because Megatronus Prime was one of Primus's 13 primes, one of his followers who ended up betraying his creator. One could argue that that Megatronus Prime is the equivalent of Judas Iscariot, the one of the 12 apostles who betrayed Jesus Christ and turned him over to the Romans, who eventually crucified him on the cross. So yeah, for those of you wondering, I am a Christian, so I just had to do that comparison because that makes the most sense for why this guy is the way he is, and if anything outside of the Transformers franchise influenced this character and how he's portrayed, that would have been what I just described already. So thank you guys all so much for watching. This has been the TFA. This has been my review of what might be the last live-action movie Transformers action figure I add to my Transformers collection, Studio Series Leader Class The Fallen. I highly recommend you get this figure, even if you don't want to buy it for the reason I did of repurposing it into Generation 1 Violent Jiger. I still think this figure is a must-have. After all, he is the first Decepticon, and for the first Decepticon to have a monstrous appearance like this, I think it works perfectly for the first Decepticon to look look as monstrous as that. So thank you guys all so much for watching, and until next time, you guys, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you to all my subscribers for your continued support, and until next time, you guys, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.